Is it correct to say Latin America? Does there really exist something called Latino America? It calls my attention that many Iberian Americans defend themselves as Latinos, as if their original communities have always been Latinos since the beginning of time. People who act like this really do not think about the true definition of the word Latino. This name originates from Lazio, Italy, the birthplace of the Latin language, that later on gave rise to modern languages like Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French, or Romanian, also Catalan or Galician. It's hilarious to see Hispanics refuse to use the term Hispanic America because it appears colonial, while Latin is the most colonial term that exists. The term Latin America originates from the French author Michel Chevalier. He emphasized the Latinity of Southern Europe, Latin Europe, then stated that this Latinity incorporated itself into the Americas as both Latin and Catholic. Later on, South American Mason authors would go on to popularize Latin America or Latino. The Emperor Napoleon III utilized this term to claim that Latin America belonged to Latin Europe, and the strongest Latin European power at that time was France. This was the ideological base for the French invasions in Hispanic America, like those that happened in Mexico or in Argentina. There could not be a more colonialist term. In theory, the term Latino refers to America that proceeds from Latin European influences. In Latin America, we see that Romanian, Galician, Catalan are not spoken over there. Primarily, Spanish and Portuguese are spoken over there, along with indigenous languages. So why say Latin America, when the correct term is Iberian America or Hispanic America if we exclude Brazil? This is an America that has fused together indigenous cultures with the Iberian culture, not Latin, generally speaking. Then one may ask, what about Haiti? They speak French there. Well, in Quebec, Canada, they also speak French there. Is that Latin America too? Or how about Jamaica? And let's not get started on the large Spanish-American influences within the United States. Is the southern part of this country Latin America too? And Italian Americans? Are they also not Latinos? Or are Italian Americans in the USA not considered Latinos, but Italian Argentinians are? Italians that emigrated to Argentina could also be called Italian Americans. Let's call all of the Americas Latin America. How about this? Let's call Canada and the United States Anglo-America, and we can simply call the rest America. Why do so many Hispanic Americans want to call themselves Latinos and not Hispanics? What do they speak, Latin or Spanish? As we can see, this term is not only colonialist, but it is completely ambiguous. What part of Europe does not have Latin influences? Greco-Latin cultural influences. Even the English language has huge Latin influences. Furthermore, there are a lot of variants of this term from the United States that separate Latin America from the Caribbean. What's going on? Cubans and Dominicans are not Latinos, but Andean people are? It is completely arbitrary. Then there are the language selections in the movies, divided in between Spanish for Spaniards and Latin Spanish for Latinos. Latin Spanish. Is there a Spanish language that is not Latin? A Spanish not derived from Latin? Spanish from Spain is what? Germanic Spanish? Or maybe Slavic Spanish? Additionally, there is no Latin Spanish that is unified. Spanish from Mexico is more like Spanish from Spain than Spanish from Argentina. Absurdity after absurdity. Also, it should be asked, why does this only happen in the Americas? How come we don't say Latin Africa for those African countries that speak Spanish, French, or Portuguese? In short, we have a Masonic and French colonialist term that is not correct, not precise, and ambiguous, when there exists a term that is much more precise and correct, that makes a more educative reference to our common culture, our Hispanic culture, Hispanic America, and Iberian America if we include Brazil. But the confusion with terminology does not end here. The naming of America is more than just doubtful, because the name America originates from Amerigo Vespucci, who is credited for telling partially invented stories. So much so that when the cartographer Martin Balsam Mueller made copies of his continental map, he baptized these continents as the Americas. But when Martin noticed flaws, he renamed them as Terra Incognita. In a follow-up edition, the name America became popular and overshadowed the fact that Christopher Columbus arrived at the mouth of the Orinoco River and named the continent the Other World. In Spain, that word was not used. Instead, the word that was used was Las Indias. Another myth that we've been told is that indigenous people were called Indians because Columbus thought he arrived in India. This account has been shown to be both false and impossible. They were called Indians, Indios, because Columbus was going to Las Indias, not to India. Las Indias were the territories to the Far East. It was well known that much of these territories still had not been explored. In the first Anglo-Saxon maps, these territories are labeled the Western Indies, nothing to do with the modern state of India. Another theory exists that the name America derives from the Nicaraguan mountain range Ameruisques, but this theory was invented in the 19th century and is inconclusive. However, the most fraudulent title for Latin America is the Abya Ayala one, utilized by indigenous activist groups. They pulled this theory out of thin air during the 70s in order to label the continents. There exists no evidence that the pre-Hispanic indigenous Kuna people used this term to refer to all of the Americas, and literally it has no definition in regards to this. What relation does the definition of the words Abya Ayala have with the continent? Abya Ayala refers to mature mother, mature virgin, or whole of blood. But sure, we can always count on indigenous activists to call me out for being European and eternally incapable of fathoming the complex and mythical indigenous world. Also, it's strange that there doesn't exist any term in Nahuatl nor in Quechua to refer to America, yet somehow a term did exist for a tribe so small and incapable of exploring and tracking the whole continent. As you all can see, the history of naming this continent is of much controversy and not easy to resolve, due to the large amount of fraudulence that is hidden beneath the surface. I assume the naming of the Americas is irreversible, and trying to change the name would take way too long. Therefore, Hispanic America, or Hispanoamerica in Spanish, is the correct term, and the most viable because it refers to the continent and to all the Spanish-speaking places within the Americas, and Iberian America, Iberoamerica, if we would like to include Brazil and all other places that have been influenced by the Iberian culture. On the contrary, Latin America, Latino America, covers so much ground that in the end, it defines nothing.